No one noticed the first human ship. Not at first. The Galactic Empire's trade corridor in Sector 18 was one of the busiest regions of known space. Thousands of vessels moved through it every hour. Cargo haulers, luxury liners, patrol craft, diplomatic convoys. The traffic was so dense that small anomalies were ignored unless they caused immediate disruption. When a ripple appeared in hyperspace near the outer lane, operators assumed it was another unstable jump from a fringe trader. Then the ripple widened. Space folded inward like strained metal. Light bent. Navigation buoys flickered. Several automated systems issued warnings. Quiet ones, low priority, easily dismissed. And then the ship emerged. It was wrong. Not elegant like Imperial cruisers. Not sleek like Dominion warships. It was heavy, rectangular, layered with thick armor plates that looked welded rather than grown or molded. No glowing insignias. No visible energy sails. Just dark metal and blunt edges. Within seconds, more ships followed. 10, 20, then dozens. They formed a loose but deliberate formation, stabilizing themselves with precision that did not match their crude appearance. No collisions. No panic adjustments. No erratic thrust. The corridor slowed as traffic controllers finally reacted. "What species is that?" one officer asked. Sensors struggled to classify the vessels. Their designs did not match any active navy. Their technology read as outdated. Fusion cores instead of antimatter, physical armor instead of energy lattices. The system flagged them as low-threat unknowns. That label stayed for less than 30 seconds. A junior sensor analyst leaned closer to her console, frowning. Her readings made no sense. The ships were broadcasting nothing. No identification. No distress call. No request for passage. They had simply appeared. Imperial patrol craft moved in, weapons inactive but ready. Standard procedure. Unknown species, likely lost or desperate. The patrol commander opened a channel. "This is Imperial traffic control. Unidentified vessels. You have entered a regulated corridor. State your origin and intent." There was no response. The human fleet held position. From a distance, they looked old. Scarred. Some hulls carried marks of previous battles. Patched plating, mismatched alloys, faded serial numbers that meant nothing to Imperial databases. They looked like survivors. The patrol commander sighed. "Probably a remnant civilization," he muttered. "Another one that missed the last few centuries." Behind him, analysts began searching historical archives. The results were thin. A few scattered references to a species called humans, aggressive, inventive, unstable, listed as politically irrelevant. Status, inactive. One record suggested extinction. The commander smiled. That explains it. He issued orders for closer inspection. The patrol ships advanced. As they crossed the designated approach distance, something subtle happened. Their sensors degraded. Not all at once. Slowly. Resolution dropped. Targeting lag increased. Background noise crept into systems that had been calibrated hours earlier. The commander frowned. "Engineering, report." "Systems nominal," came the reply. "Minor interference only." The patrol continued forward. At half the permitted distance, navigation drifted. Thrusters responded a fraction of a second late. Weapons powered down without command input. Still no alarms. Just inconvenience. The human ships did not move. They did not raise weapons. They did not power shields. They did not act threatened. They waited. In the control center, the junior analyst's hands shook slightly. She had run the numbers again and again. Her conclusion did not change. "These ships," she said quietly, "are suppressing us." Her superior barely looked up. "Impossible. We'd see energy spikes." "That's the problem," she replied. "We don't." She highlighted a projection. Space around the human fleet looked normal, but mathematically, it was wrong. Distances fluctuated. Timestamps drifted out of sync. Physical constants bent just enough to interfere with advanced systems while leaving basic mechanics intact. "They're not attacking," she said. "They are enforcing conditions." The patrol commander opened the channel again, irritation replacing confidence. "Unidentified vessels, you are interfering with Imperial operations. Power down immediately." This time, a response came. The voice was calm. "Humans." Clear but without emotion. "Imperial Patrol," it said. "You are advised to halt your approach." The commander stiffened. "Identify yourself." There was a pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. "We are human," the voice said. "And you are too close." The bridge went silent. The word human triggered faint recognition. Old myths. Old warnings. Stories without endings. The commander laughed uneasily. "That's not possible. Humans are forgotten," the voice finished. "Yes, we noticed." The patrol ships drifted helplessly now, their systems barely responsive. No damage. No explosions. Just control slipping away. On the human ships, nothing changed. No flares. No escalation. They were not improvising. They had planned this. The commander swallowed. "Why are you here?" Another pause. "We wandered," the human voice said. "Our navigation was precise. Your records were not." In the control center, alarms finally began to ring, not from weapons, but from analysis systems updating their threat models. The human fleet was being reclassified in real time, every second pushing the assessment higher. Still, the humans made no demands. No threats. No claims. They simply existed where they should not have. The junior analyst whispered, "They didn't arrive by accident." Her superior turned slowly. "Explain." "They exited hyperspace at the only point in this corridor where local physics allows containment fields to function against something much larger." He stared at the data. Against what? Before she could answer, the human voice spoke again. "You may withdraw," it said. "We will remain briefly." "Briefly for what?" the commander asked. "For observation," the voice replied. "We need to know if the galaxy still reacts the way it used to." The patrol ships disengaged as best they could, retreating beyond the invisible boundary. Systems recovered almost immediately once distance was restored. The human fleet did not pursue. They did not follow. They stayed exactly where they were, watching. Deep in the Empire's data vaults, sealed archives stirred for the first time in centuries. Forgotten war logs attempted to surface. Corrupted files requested authorization they no longer remembered how to obtain. One phrase appeared across multiple damaged records before vanishing again. "Do not provoke humanity." In the corridor, surrounded by 1,000 alien ships, the human fleet remained silent. Not lost. Not weak. Not afraid. They had arrived exactly where they meant to. And the galaxy was about to remember why that mattered. The Galactic Empire did not panic. That was the first mistake. By the time the patrol ships returned to safe distance, reports were already flooding the Imperial data network. Interference fields. Unknown suppression effects. A species claiming to be human. Most of it was dismissed before it reached senior command. In the Empire, problems were ranked by scale. Piracy mattered. Rebellions mattered. Economic disruptions mattered. One quiet fleet of outdated ships sitting politely in a trade corridor did not. Within the hour, the situation was handed to the Bureau of Minor Species Compliance. That alone told humanity how seriously they were being taken. The bureau chamber was circular and brightly lit, designed to make visitors feel small. Delegates from half a dozen species sat in raised tiers, their expressions bored or amused. To them, this was routine, a lost civilization, a misunderstanding, a formality before enforcement. A projection of the human fleet hovered above the central table. "They don't even use antimatter," one delegate scoffed. "Look at those hulls. Physical armor. How inefficient." Another flicked through the recovered archives. "Humans, short lifespan, emotional, aggressive. No stable empire. No long-term presence. Extinct, according to this," someone added. Laughter rippled through the chamber. An Imperial strategist cleared his throat. "They interfered with patrol systems." "Interference happens," the bureau head replied, "especially with old technology leaking radiation." The strategist hesitated. It wasn't radiation. That earned a glance, then dismissal. The decision was swift and unanimous. The humans would be formally acknowledged, which in Imperial language meant they would be reminded of their insignificance. A single diplomatic cruiser was dispatched, escorted by a light enforcement wing. Not warships, just enough presence to establish authority. The cruiser approached the human fleet confidently, broadcasting its insignia and legal mandates across all known frequencies. "This is the Galactic Empire," the envoy announced. "You are in violation of corridor regulations. You will submit to inspection and temporary disarmament." The human fleet did not move. The envoy waited, then repeated the message more slowly, as one might speak to a primitive species. At last, a response came. "We acknowledge your authority," the human voice said. The envoy smiled. Good. Then you will comply. There was a pause. We will not, the voice added. The smile faded. Clarify, the envoy said sharply. You may observe, the human replied. You may record. You may withdraw. You may not inspect. You may not board. The escort commander laughed openly on a shared channel. You don't dictate terms here. The human voice remained calm. We are aware. The enforcement ships advanced. Immediately, the same interference returned, but stronger this time. Shields shimmered, then collapsed. Weapons refused to lock. Internal gravity fluctuated, causing the crew to stumble. The diplomatic cruiser's systems flickered. Translation matrices lagged. Long-range communications blurred. The envoy slammed a clawed hand onto the console. This is an act of aggression. No, the human voice corrected. This is restraint. One of the escort captains attempted to fire a warning shot. The command never reached the weapon. Instead, space between the escort ship and the human fleet compressed slightly. Not visibly, just enough to twist the ship's frame. Hull plating groaned. The crew cried out as gravity spiked for half a second, then vanished. The ship was released unharmed. Drifting. Disabled. The rest of the escort froze. The human fleet still had not fired a single weapon. Back in the bureau chamber, laughter had turned into confusion. Why are they limiting themselves? One analyst asked. If they can do this, why not destroy the ships? A senior historian, long ignored, spoke quietly. Because they always did. The room went silent. He pulled up ancient, half-corrupted files, conflicts without names, enemies without descriptions. Entire wars recorded only by aftermaths. Civilizations listed as evacuated when no evacuation records existed. In each case, one note repeated. Human intervention confirmed. Escalation prevented. They never fought to win, the historian said. They fought to stop things. The diplomatic envoy, shaken but alive, reopened the channel. What do you want? He demanded. The human reply came slower this time. We wanted to know, the voice said, if the Empire remembered us. Clearly we do not, the envoy snapped. Then that is unfortunate, the human said. For you. The human fleet began to change. Not aggressively. Subtly. Ships shifted position, forming patterns that made no tactical sense to Imperial doctrine. Distances equalized. Angles aligned with stellar gravity wells. The formation grew larger without moving outward, as if space itself was accommodating them. Sensors struggled to keep up. What are they doing? Someone whispered in the control room. The answer came from deep space monitoring arrays. A long-range alert triggered, one that had not been activated in centuries. Anomalous mass movement. Unknown vector. Extreme velocity. Something was coming. The Empire's sensors barely detected it. The human fleet, however, adjusted instantly, reorienting themselves toward a distant point beyond mapped space. The envoy noticed. What is that? The human voice replied, softer now. That, it said, is why we wandered back. Is it a weapon? The envoy asked. No, the human answered. It is a consequence. In the bureau chamber, emergency lights replaced calm illumination. Data poured in faster than it could be processed. The approaching anomaly dwarfed known fleets. Its energy signature was wrong, fragmented, recursive, layered. The historian stared at the display in horror. It's the same, he whispered. It was learned. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire felt something unfamiliar. Not anger. Not pride. Fear. The human fleet moved again, this time forward, placing itself between the Empire's worlds and the approaching darkness. No announcement. No demand. Just position. The human voice spoke one last time to the envoy. You laughed, it said, without accusation. That is understandable. You forgot us. A pause. We did not forget you. The channel closed. The human ships powered up, not to attack, but to endure. And as the incoming threat finally became visible on Imperial sensors, one truth became impossible to deny. Humanity had not returned to be acknowledged. They had returned because no one else could stand where they were standing now. The Empire did not sleep. Across thousands of systems, lights burned in command centers that had not been fully staffed in centuries. Analysts, historians, and military planners were pulled from retirement, exile, and obscurity. Old clearance codes were reactivated. Forgotten vaults were forced open. The approaching anomaly changed everything. For the first time, The Empire was not asking how to control the situation. It was asking if control was still possible. The human fleet held its position in silence, forming a barrier that no imperial doctrine could explain. They did not demand resources. They did not request aid. They did not coordinate with imperial command. They acted as if the Empire were not part of the equation at all. That frightened the admirals more than any threat display. In the high strategic chamber, a massive projection showed the incoming force. It had no single shape. It fractured and reassembled as it moved, its mass fluctuating between impossible extremes. Every attempt to model it failed. "It's not a fleet," one scientist said. "It's not even a structure." "What is it then?" an admiral demanded. The scientist hesitated. "It behaves like a memory." That word echoed uncomfortably through the chamber. Meanwhile, imperial historians worked through the night. Their task was simple in theory: find every mention of humanity across recorded history. In practice, it became impossible. Human references did not disappear cleanly. They were not deleted. They were broken. Pages ended mid-sentence. Battle logs referenced victories with no opposing force named. Star maps showed regions sealed without explanation. Entire wars had outcomes, but no beginnings. One junior archivist noticed a pattern. Wherever humans appeared, something else vanished. Not immediately, not dramatically, just gone. Civilizations faded from records within decades. Threats ceased to be mentioned. Borders stabilized unnaturally fast. It was as if history itself had been edited to remove panic. She brought her findings to a senior historian, an old being whose species remembered time differently. "They weren't conquerors," he said slowly. "They were cleaners." "What does that mean?" she asked. "They removed things," he replied, "and then removed themselves so no one would ask what was removed." At the edge of the corridor, Imperial sensors suddenly improved, not because of Imperial action, but because the humans adjusted something. For a brief moment, the Empire could see what the humans saw. The anomaly sharpened into something almost recognizable. Not ships, not machines. Fragments of broken space folded around a core of violent intent. It moved by consuming physical laws, rewriting them as it advanced. "This thing," an admiral whispered, "it doesn't attack systems. It erases them," the scientist replied. The human fleet shifted again, tightening formation. Some ships powered down entirely, becoming inert mass. Others flared with controlled energy outputs that bent surrounding space. Imperial tacticians tried to calculate the human strength. They failed. Human ships were not optimized for firepower or speed. They were optimized for containment. A realization spread through the chamber, slow and dreadful. Humanity had not built weapons to defeat enemies. They had built tools to hold the line against things that could not be defeated. An Imperial delegation requested direct communication. This time, the humans answered immediately. "You are studying," the human envoy said. "That is good. You could have told us," an Imperial counselor said. "You could have warned us centuries ago." "We did," the human replied. "You archived it." Silence followed. "What do you want now?" the counselor asked. The human voice softened. "We want to know how much of you remains unprepared." "What does that mean?" "It means," the human said, "we do not know if this galaxy can survive seeing the truth." As if summoned by the words, long-range sensors detected movement behind the anomaly. More of it. Not reinforcements. Reflections. The Empire realized then that the anomaly was not a singular event. It was a consequence spreading outward, drawn toward populated regions, toward complexity, toward life. A weapon from a forgotten war that had never stopped functioning. The historian collapsed into his seat. "It didn't learn to fight," he whispered. "It learned to wait." Across the human fleet, internal systems synchronized. Old symbols appeared on hulls, warning marks, not identification. Some ships transmitted farewell messages across narrow beams aimed at nothing the Empire could detect. Imperial observers asked why. The answer came quietly. "Some of us will not return," the human envoy said. The Empire offered assistance immediately. Fleets, resources, anything. The humans declined. "You are not built for this," the envoy said. "Not yet." That stung. Imperial pride flared, but it died quickly under the weight of truth. Their greatest fleets could not survive even brief exposure to the forces the humans were manipulating casually. As the anomaly drew closer, time distortion became noticeable. Communications lagged unpredictably. Some star systems experienced double sunrises within a single cycle. Others lost hours entirely. The human fleet absorbed the worst of it. Ships at the front began to fracture, not explode, but age rapidly. Armor corroded in seconds. Hulls cracked as if centuries passed in moments. Human vessels rotated positions smoothly, replacing damaged ships without chaos. They had practiced this. One Imperial officer finally asked the question no one else dared. How long have you been doing this? The human response took longer than usual. Longer than your empire, the envoy said. Shorter than the problem requires. As the anomaly entered engagement range, the human fleet locked into final formation. Space groaned. Imperial sensors overloaded, then stabilized at new baselines that would later become permanent. Physics itself seemed to accept human interference as a temporary rule change. The anomaly slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. The Empire watched as the humans did the impossible, holding back something that should not have been resisted. And in that moment, a final data packet emerged from the deepest Imperial vaults, unlocked by resonance alone. A message, time-stamped beyond recorded history. It read, "If humanity returns without announcement, the end has resumed." The Empire finally understood. Humanity had never wandered away. They had been standing somewhere far worse. And now, that place is coming here. The archive did not open like a door. It broke. Data spilled across Imperial systems without order or permission. Files appeared in places they did not belong. Old star charts overlaid new ones. Military logs rewrote themselves as if correcting long-standing lies. Emergency systems tried to shut it down. They failed. The archive was not responding to Imperial authority. It was responding to human proximity. In the high strategic chamber, silence replaced panic as images stabilized. What appeared on the projection did not look like a war. It looked like an absence. Entire regions of space were marked by darkness where stars should have been. Not destroyed. Not collapsed. Simply removed. The voids had sharp boundaries, as if cut away with precision. These regions, an admiral said slowly, are outside our maps. A historian shook his head. No, they are inside our maps. They were erased. As the archive unfolded, context followed. Centuries ago, before the Empire's rise, before many of its founding species reached space, something emerged from deep reality fractures beyond charted space. It was not born. It was not built. It was triggered. A cascading failure of physical laws caused by reckless experimentation from a long-dead civilization. They had tried to fold dimensions together to escape entropy. Instead, they created a process that fed on structure itself. The archive did not name it. Names gave it shape. The recordings showed early galactic forces attempting to fight it. Fleets vanished without impact. Weapons passed through it or shattered themselves firing. Entire civilizations mobilized, and then stopped existing within a few standard years. Panic followed. Coalitions formed and collapsed. Species turned on one another for resources. The galaxy began to tear itself apart faster than the anomaly ever could. Then a new presence appeared in the logs. Humanity, not as leaders, not as saviors, as volunteers. Early human ships were crude and slow, but they behaved differently. They did not attack the anomaly directly. They studied it. They tracked where it weakened reality the most. They mapped what it avoided. They learned it did not seek destruction. It sought complexity, life, networks, empires. The more ordered a region became, the faster it spread toward it. Humanity made a choice no one else would. They dismantled complexity. The archive showed human fleets deliberately collapsing trade hubs, destroying their own colonies, cutting communication lines, and isolating entire regions, sacrificing millions to slow the spread. Other species called it barbaric. Until it worked. The anomaly slowed wherever humanity passed through. Where humans withdrew, it stalled, confused by the sudden lack of structure. That was when humanity understood the truth. The anomaly was not an enemy to defeat. It was a consequence to contain. Humanity built new technologies, not weapons, but anchors. Fields that stabilized reality by limiting interaction. Ships designed to absorb time distortion. Fleets capable of holding positions for decades without resupply. And then came the final decision. The archive showed a gathering of human leaders, not emperors, not kings, but tired figures speaking quietly in a dark room. If humanity stayed visible, the galaxy would follow them, rebuild around them, create new complexity. The anomaly would follow too. So humanity vanished. They sealed themselves into the front lines. They erased records. They altered navigation charts. They dismantled their own legend. They became a myth no one would chase. The war ended, not with victory, but with silence. The Empire existed because humanity accepted being forgotten. The archive ended abruptly. In the chamber, no one spoke. At the edge of the corridor, the human fleet continued its work. The anomaly pressed harder now, reacting to resistance. Space twisted violently near the front lines. Human ships disappeared, not destroyed, but folded inward as containment fields failed. Still, the line held. An Imperial counselor finally found his voice. "Why show us this now?" The human envoy answered without hesitation. "Because you are about to repeat our mistake," he said. "You are mobilizing, centralizing, fortifying. That's how wars are fought," the counselor replied. "Yes," the human said, "and that is why you will lose." The Imperial command argued. Strategy demanded resistance. Pride demanded retaliation. But the data was undeniable. Every Imperial action strengthened the anomaly's advance. Humanity had spent centuries unlearning how to fight so they could learn how to endure. The Empire had never needed to learn that lesson. Now it did, too late. Sensors flared. The anomaly surged forward unexpectedly, splitting into multiple fronts. One branch curved directly toward a populated Imperial core world. Human ships reacted instantly. 3 vessels broke formation and accelerated, not away, but into the anomaly. Imperial commanders screamed warnings. The ships vanished from sensors within seconds. The surge stopped. The branch collapsed, consuming itself as physical laws stabilized violently around the sacrifice. Silence followed. The human envoy lowered his head slightly. "Those crews volunteered," he said. "They always do." For the first time, the Empire understood the cost of humanity's restraint. They had not been weak. They were exhausted. The anomaly advanced again, slower now, cautious. It was learning, and humanity was running out of ships. The Empire offered everything it had: fleets, technology, authority, even surrender. The human envoy declined again. "You cannot replace us," he said, "but you can survive after us." That sentence landed like a sentence of death. As the human fleet restructured for another containment cycle, Imperial systems recorded something unprecedented. A human ship broadcast a memorial signal, short, encrypted, and final. The Empire could not decode it, but it did not need to. The signal was not for them. It was for other humans, somewhere beyond known space. The part ends as Imperial sensors detect a second anomaly awakening far from the first, drawn not by resistance, but by attention. Humanity had been holding one line. Now there were 2, and the galaxy was finally awake enough to see how fragile it truly was. The Empire prepared for war. That was instinct. That was tradition. That was all it knew. Across Imperial space, fleets were mobilized. Shipyards worked beyond capacity. Ancient defense platforms were reactivated, their systems coughing awake after centuries of silence. Military governors seized authority from civil councils. Borders closed. Trade routes collapsed. The Empire did what empires always did when afraid. It gathered itself. From the human fleet, the response was immediate, but not angry. It was concerning. Human ships repositioned again, but not around Imperial worlds. They moved outward, spreading thin, forming long arcs between stars that no Imperial strategist would ever choose to defend. They were not guarding territory. They were redirecting attention. Imperial commanders misread it at first. "They're encircling us," one admiral declared. Classic containment. The human envoy corrected him calmly. "No," he said. "We are thinning ourselves." The words made no sense. "You are exposing your flanks," the admiral snapped. "You are making yourselves vulnerable." "Yes," the human replied. "That is the point." The anomaly responded almost immediately. Its advance slowed toward the Empire's core worlds and shifted instead toward the dispersed human formations. Like a predator adjusting its hunt, it curved toward the densest resistance. Toward humanity. Imperial sensors watched in disbelief as human ships deliberately placed themselves closer to the threat, sometimes dangerously close, triggering surges that battered hulls and shredded containment fields. Human crews did not retreat. They held. Imperial analysts finally understood. Humanity was not defending the Empire. Humanity was drawing fire. In the strategic chamber, panic gave way to argument. They are sacrificing themselves, a counselor said. We cannot allow this. They are choosing this, the historian replied. There is a difference. The Empire opened full diplomatic channels, offering alliance, shared command, even submission. Humanity refused them all. We are not here to rule you, the envoy said. If we were, we would have done so long ago. Then why come back now? An imperial voice demanded. The human paused before answering. Because you reached the size where our absence became dangerous, he said. You built too much. Too fast. You became visible again. That truth cut deeper than accusation. Imperial society had grown vast and interconnected. Hyper-efficient. Brilliant. Fragile. Everything the anomaly was drawn to. Humanity had returned not because it wanted something. It had returned because the Empire had become too important to lose. At the front line, the strain increased. Human ships began rotating faster. Crews aged years within hours as time distortion intensified. Medical teams worked non-stop to stabilize bodies exposed to broken physics. Some ships simply vanished, their containment failing silently. Each loss reduced the line. Each reduction made the next loss more likely. Imperial fleets waited behind the human formations, weapons armed, commanders desperate to help, but unable to understand what they were even targeting. Finally, an Imperial captain broke protocol. He ordered his fleet forward. The moment his ships crossed into the human-controlled zone, alarms screamed. Hulls warped. Power cores destabilized. The crew collapsed as gravity spiked and twisted. Human ships rushed to compensate, reinforcing local reality to prevent total collapse. The human envoy's voice cut across all channels, sharp for the first time. Pull back, he ordered. You are making it worse. The Imperial fleet barely escaped, battered and shaken. The lesson was clear. Imperial power was not useless. It was harmful. The anomaly surged again, this time splitting further, creating overlapping distortions that even human containment struggled to stabilize. Human command made a decision. A terrible one. Several human ships powered down their drives entirely and locked themselves into fixed positions directly inside the advancing distortions. Their containment fields flared bright, then stabilized unnaturally. Anchors. Living anchors. Imperial observers realized what was happening too late. Those ships were not meant to survive. They were meant to hold reality together long enough for everything else to adapt. Imperial officers protested, screamed, begged. Human command acknowledged them and continued. One human captain transmitted an open signal, not to the Empire, but to his own fleet. This is why we trained, he said calmly. Hold the line. Make it matter. His ship vanished seconds later. The anomaly slowed again. Not stopped, but slowed enough for human formations to adjust. The Empire felt something crack, not in its fleets, but in its identity. For the first time, it was not the strongest force present. It was the protected one. In the strategic chamber, an Imperial child, brought there as a symbol of continuity, asked a question no one else dared. Why don't they save themselves? No one answered. The historian finally spoke. Because if they do, he said softly, we won't. As the anomaly hesitated, reacting to humanity's sacrifices, long-range sensors detected a change. Not another threat. A response. Something deep within the anomaly's structure shifted. Patterns altered. Behavior changed. It was adapting. Not to weapons. To sacrifice. The human envoy went silent as data streamed in. His posture stiffened. We are running out of acceptable options, he said. The Empire asked what that meant. The answer was not comforting. It means, the human said, we may have to do something we promised ourselves we never would again. What? An Imperial counselor asked. The human looked toward the anomaly, his expression unreadable. Become visible, he said. At that moment, human ships across the line began broadcasting. Not commands. No warnings. History. Unfiltered records. Names. Images. Losses. Entire centuries of war that humanity had hidden to protect the galaxy from fear. The broadcast spread faster than containment fields. Across Imperial worlds, citizens watched as the truth unfolded. Human fleets burning, worlds sacrificed, entire generations spent holding lines no one else knew existed. The Empire saw humanity not as warriors, but as custodians who never asked to be remembered. The anomaly reacted violently. It surged toward the broadcasts, toward awareness. Human command reacted instantly. Shut it down. Imperial leaders begged. You'll draw it closer. We know, the human envoy replied. But now you understand what you're losing. The human fleet locked into final dispersion patterns, thinner than ever before. The Empire finally realized the truth too late. Humanity had not returned to invade. They had returned because they were almost out of time, and the line they had held alone for centuries was beginning to break. The line broke. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough. A human containment node failed near the outer arc, its anchor ship collapsing into fractured light as time folded inward. The anomaly surged through the gap like water through a cracked wall, accelerating with sudden hunger. Imperial sensors screamed. Worlds that had been safe minutes earlier fell within projected reach. Evacuation protocols activated too late. Defense fleets scrambled without targets to fire at. For the first time since humanity returned, the human fleet reacted violently. Across the line, dormant systems awakened. Ships that had been silent since arrival powered up fully. Hull markings flared, not as symbols, but as system state indicators. Human restraint ended. Imperial observers struggled to understand what they were seeing. Human ships did not fire beams or launch missiles. Instead, space around them rearranged. Local gravity wells inverted. Time compression fields snapped into place. Entire volumes of space were sectioned off, isolated like rooms sealed in a burning structure. The anomaly struck these zones and stalled. For the first time, it encountered resistance that did not weaken. Humanity had stopped containing. They were restructuring reality. The human envoy spoke across open channels, his voice no longer calm, but focused. Imperial forces fall back immediately. What follows is not survivable for you. This time, the Empire obeyed. As Imperial fleets withdrew, human formations tightened. Ships aligned into patterns no living strategist had designed, symmetries that resonated with space-time itself. Then the humans did something no record had ever shown. They advanced. Human vessels pushed directly into the anomaly's core zones, their containment fields overlapping and reinforcing one another. Where the anomaly attempted to consume complexity, it instead encountered simplification. Human systems stripping interactions down to fundamentals. The anomaly convulsed. Not in pain, in confusion. It tried to adapt, rewriting laws as it always had, but found fewer and fewer rules to exploit. Humanity was not fighting it like an enemy. They were starving it. Imperial scientists watched in stunned silence. They're not overpowering it, one whispered. They're making it irrelevant. At the center of the human formation, a massive vessel powered up, larger than any Imperial dreadnought, its hull layered with centuries of repairs and modifications. This ship had not moved since humanity arrived. Until now, it advanced alone. Imperial sensors failed to classify it. Its mass readings fluctuated wildly, sometimes exceeding planetary scale, sometimes dropping to near nothing. The human envoy identified it simply. That is a keystone ship, he said. There are not many left. What does it do? An Imperial admiral asked. The envoy did not answer immediately. Instead, the keystone ship activated. Reality bent. Not violently. Precisely. A massive region of space, millions of kilometers wide, was isolated from the surrounding universe. Inside, the anomaly raged, cut off from new structure, new complexity, new targets. The keystone ship began to compress the region. Imperial observers realized too late what was happening. They're sealing it, someone breathed. Like before. Yes, the historian said quietly. But this time smaller. Human command transmitted a single message to the keystone ship. Authorization confirmed. The ship did not respond. It did not need to. Inside the sealed region, space-time collapsed inward, folding over itself in layers until the anomaly could no longer propagate. Physical laws stabilized violently, annihilating anything that depended on instability to exist. The region imploded into nothingness. Not an explosion. An absence. Imperial sensors went blind for several seconds as reality adjusted. When vision returned, the anomaly was gone. One front. Silence followed. Imperial crews cheered instinctively, then stopped as they noticed the cost. The keystone ship was missing. No debris, No wreckage. No signal. It had sealed itself inside the collapse. A human fleet commander spoke softly over internal channels. Mark them remembered. Human ships rotated positions again, closing gaps, preparing for the remaining fronts. The Imperial command was finally understood. This was not humanity's full power. This was what they allowed themselves to use. The anomaly reacted to the loss, not with rage, but strategy. Remaining fronts began dispersing, splitting into smaller, faster-moving distortions. Human response was immediate. They did not chase. They predicted. Human ships jumped ahead of the anomaly's projected paths, arriving at points the Empire did not know existed. Junctions of probability, intersections of potential futures. They sealed those instead. Piece by piece, the anomaly was boxed in, reduced, cornered. Imperial fleets watched helplessly, unable to contribute, unable to interfere. For the first time, the Empire understood what it meant to be outclassed. Not in weapons, in understanding. As the final containment cycles began, a new signal appeared, weak, distorted, but unmistakable. Humans. A surviving Keystone crew transmitted from within a collapsing region, their ship breaking apart, but their systems still functioning long enough to send one message. We held, the voice said. Make it count. The signal vanished. The Empire felt the loss like a physical weight. The anomaly's last major front destabilized under combined human pressure. Space snapped back into alignment, violently but permanently. The threat was not destroyed. It ended. The galaxy exhaled. Human ships powered down slowly, one by one. Damage reports flooded their networks. Crews were exhausted, aged, injured. Entire vessels were gone. Humanity had won. But it was a victory carved out of exhaustion. Imperial leaders finally addressed the human envoy, not as officials, but as witnesses. You could rule us, one said. No one would stop you. The human envoy looked out at the shattered line where human ships drifted, many dark. That is why we never will, he replied. Imperial space began to change almost immediately. Sensors recalibrated to new physical baselines set by human intervention. Trade routes shifted permanently. Strategic doctrine collapsed. Nothing would work the same way again. The Empire had survived because humanity chose to stand where no one else could. As human fleets began withdrawing from the corridor, Imperial citizens watched in silence, not cheering, not celebrating, remembering. The part ends with a final realization spreading through Imperial command. Humanity did not unleash its power to show dominance. They unleashed it because holding back was no longer enough, and there might not be enough of them left to do it again. The galaxy did not celebrate. I did not know how. When the final distortions faded and the stars returned to their proper places, silence spread across Imperial space. Fleets powered down. Emergency broadcasts ended mid-sentence. Billions of lives resumed without realizing how close they had come to erasure. Only the humans remained alert. Human ships drifted where the line had been, their formations broken now, uneven, fragile. Some vessels showed no signs of life. Others broadcast medical distress signals that only other humans could decode. The Empire watched from a distance. For the first time in its history, it did not move forward to claim victory. It waited. Human command gathered what remained of its fleet. Damage reports flowed in slowly, incomplete, delayed by systems that had been pushed far beyond safe limits. Losses were heavy, heavier than anyone outside the human fleet understood. Entire generational crews were gone. Specialized ships that took centuries to build had vanished without record. Human populations that lived only aboard those vessels ceased to exist in a single moment. Humanity did not announce these losses. They logged them quietly. Imperial observers noticed something strange. There were no human relief ships arriving. No reinforcements. No replacements. What does that mean? An Imperial admiral asked. A human liaison answered him, voice steady but tired. It means, she said, there are no reserves. That truth settled heavily. The Empire had assumed humanity was vast, endless, an ancient force with numbers hidden beyond known space. They were wrong. Humanity was finite. They always had been. In the strategic chamber, Imperial leaders finally stood, not in command, but in acknowledgement. You saved us, the High Chancellor said. The Empire owes you its existence. The human envoy listened, unmoving. We did what we always do, he replied. We prevent endings. Name your price, the Chancellor said. Territory, authority, permanent command. The galaxy will accept it. The human envoy closed his eyes briefly. You still do not understand, he said. Then explain, the Chancellor replied. Human command authorized release of a final archive. This one was not history. It was the demographics, population charts, fleet counts, replacement projections, human life expectancy under containment duty. Imperial analysts stared in disbelief. Humanity's numbers had been shrinking for centuries. Not from war, from duty. Each generation had been smaller than the last. Fewer births, fewer worlds. More people are choosing service over survival. The anomaly had not been the first. It had been the last threat humanity could still stop. We cannot rule you, the human envoy said softly, because we cannot even replace ourselves anymore. Silence followed. The Empire had survived because humanity had accepted extinction slowly, deliberately, without asking anyone to notice. Imperial civilians began to learn the truth, not through official channels, but through fragments leaked by overwhelmed systems. Images of human ships holding the line, names of lost crews, time-lapse footage of humans aging decades and hours to stabilize reality. The galaxy reacted, not with fear, with shame. Monuments were proposed overnight. Honors voted through in emergency sessions. Entire species demanded humanity be elevated beyond any political rank. Humanity declined them all. We do not need statues, the envoy said. We need you to endure. Imperial fleets offered escort, protection, and resupply. Humanity accepts only medical aid. They did not need weapons. They needed time. As human ships prepared to withdraw, Imperial commanders noticed something else. Human navigation charts no longer avoided Imperial space. They intersected it. Are you staying? An admiral asked. For now, the human replied. The damage you saw, it changed the galaxy. There will be aftershocks. What kind? Conceptual, the human said. Reality remembers stress. Humanity would not leave this time. They would linger, not as rulers, as watchers. Imperial citizens across countless worlds stood in silence as human ships passed overhead, scarred and dim. Some worlds dimmed their lights. Others transmitted music, poetry, and messages of gratitude in languages humans did not speak, but understood anyway. Human crews listened quietly. Some cried. Some did not. A human medical officer reported something unexpected. Birth rates were rising. Not quickly, but measurably. Hope had weight. The human envoy addressed the Empire one final time before formal withdrawal from command channels. You asked what you owe us, he said. You owe us memory. The Empire swore it. Not as law. As for culture, school records changed. Military doctrine rewrote itself. History was no longer measured in empires, but in who stood when collapse came. Humanity was no longer a myth. They were a measure. As human fleets dispersed into smaller patrol groups, a quiet truth spread among them. They had won, but they had also reached the edge of what they could give. The next threat, if it came, might find humanity unable to stand alone. The human envoy stood on the bridge of his ship, watching Imperial stars drift past. Was it worth it? A junior officer asked. The envoy did not answer immediately. He looked at the galaxy that still existed. Yes, he said. Every time. But his voice carried something new. Not pride. Concern. Because now the galaxy knows. And knowledge attracted attention. Far beyond Imperial borders, deep in regions humanity had once sealed forever, something stirred. Not fully awakened, but aware. Not of power. Of resistance. The part ends with a single unresolved truth settling into the stars. Humanity had carried the weight alone for too long, and the universe had noticed when they finally set it down. The galaxy did not return to normal. It could not. Trade resumed. Borders reopened. Fleets repaired themselves. Empires continued to argue, negotiate, and expand. On the surface, life went on. But beneath it all, something fundamental had changed. Reality itself behaved differently now. Navigation charts required new margins. Physics tolerances shifted. Certain regions of space carried warnings not issued by governments, but by experience. Here, humanity once stood. Imperial academies rewrote their first lessons. Not about power, not about conquest, about restraint. Students were taught that the strongest force in the galaxy had never ruled it, that the most advanced civilization had chosen to disappear rather than be followed. That survival did not always look like victory. Humanity became a reference point, not a threat, a boundary. Human ships remained scattered across imperial space, not as garrisons, but as quiet presences. They did not intervene in politics. They did not enforce law. They watched for fractures, distortions, and patterns that felt wrong. They repaired what they could, and when they could not, they warned. The Empire listened now. Every warning. Human population centers slowly re-emerged, not large worlds, but modest ones. Stations, habitats, places designed not for growth, but for continuity. Imperial citizens noticed something else. Humans laughed more now, not because the burden was gone, because it was shared, even if only in awareness. Children across the Empire learned human phrases for concepts their languages had never needed before. Holding the line, standing alone, choosing to stay. They learned that humanity had never been perfect, only stubborn. In the high strategic chamber, the historian who had first spoken up during the crisis stood before a new archive. This one was not sealed. It was open. The title read simply, The Watchers. It contained no battle plans, no weapons data, only records of when humanity intervened and when it chose not to. The Empire learned something uncomfortable from it. Humanity did not save everyone. They saved enough. Far beyond imperial space, the sealed regions humanity had once abandoned remained silent. Mostly, sensors detected fluctuations occasionally, tiny, harmless disturbances that faded quickly. Human patrols logged them without alarm. But once, a signal appeared. Not hostile, not aggressive, curious. Human command did not respond with weapons. They responded with silence. The signal faded. Some threats learned faster than others. The Empire offered humanity a permanent seat in its ruling council. Humanity declined. Instead, they accepted observer status, present, but without vote. That mattered. Power always attracted attention. Witnessing did not. Years passed. Then decades. Human numbers stabilized. Slowly, carefully. Not because the galaxy rushed to help, but because humanity was no longer alone in memory. Imperial engineers adopted human containment principles. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough to ease the load. Other species began to specialize, not in war, but in stability, reality engineering, temporal safety, causal forecasting. The galaxy began to grow wiser, not stronger. Humanity allowed themselves something they had not had in centuries. Future plans. The human envoy, older now, slower, stood once more in the same corridor where humanity had first arrived unnoticed. The trade lanes were busier than ever, but traffic paused as his ship passed. Not from fear, from respect. A junior Imperial officer asked him a question through an open channel. Do you regret it? The officer asked. Letting yourselves be forgotten for so long? Humans considered the stars. No, he said. We regret that it was necessary. Would you do it again? The human smiled faintly. Yes, he said. But next time, we won't do it alone. The officer did not understand at first. Then he did. The galaxy had learned. That was the real victory. Far away, in a region no map could fully describe, something ancient shifted in response to the new balance. It sensed resistance not from one point, but many. Distributed. Prepared. Aware. It hesitated. For the first time, it did not advance. The universe had adapted. Humanity did not chase it. They never did. They waited. And waiting, the galaxy learned, was not weakness. It was vigilance. The final human ships powered down their long-range emergency systems and returned to patrol mode. Not because danger was gone, but because panic was no longer necessary. Imperial records marked the date quietly, not as a war, not as a victory, but as a correction. The day humanity stopped being forgotten. And in countless worlds across the stars, when people looked up and wondered why the universe felt more stable than it once had, they did not say humanity saved them. They said something simpler. Humanity stayed.